Now, I think the elephant in the room here, the thing I really wanted to talk about, and I keep hearing it a lot, and this was the discussion that I saw from Mr. Pokey and Gotcha Smack, is they were talking about the rerun banners and in the rerun banners here in 3.0. So I'll go ahead and pull this up. This is effectively kind of what we're looking for in our phase one and our phase two. So if you if you've been living under a rock, maybe. So this is effectively it. We're looking at event warp. Phase one is going to be the Herda, Fei Shao, and Lingsha, and Jade. Right. Phase two is going to be Aglaya, Robin, Boot Hill, and Silver Wolf. Yeah, we're getting 2 premieres and we're getting 6 reruns. Which this is kind of like our patch with Fei Shao, where we got a triple run. We got, like, I think it wasn't a double triple, it was just a single. We got Robin, Kafka, and I can't remember who else. Yeah, I can't remember. But it's the dot team effectively, right? So it allowed you to basically pick up the dot team, like from that patch if you had just started, or if you just wanted to get Eidolons, whatever, right? But so I heard their conversation, and I think that they kind of came to an assessment and agreement effectively that, like, yes, we agree that more reruns is overall, just on that blanket statement, is a good thing. I would agree with that as well. I don't think that there's necessarily a downside of reruns unless you just have no self-control as a person and you need to literally pull every character on every banner, no matter if you have them or not. Which I think that would be just somebody that probably should not play this game. It's a self-control issue. But realistically, I think for the majority of people, being able to reliably, I guess this is the big thing, reliably understand that they're going to do a lot, if not every time, 3 reruns every banner patch, gives you an expectation, and you can kind of understand that. And I think that's a big problem that I think a lot of people are either fighting on or fighting against, or kind of discussing right now. And I think that's fair, completely fair, because this is only the second time. If you can reliably think or know or plan for a triple rerun banner like this, then you can effectively kind of have an understanding and expectation of kind of what's going to come out. I think Mr. Pokey's argument, to bottle it up into one sentence, is effectively more reruns good. And I kind of agree with him. Now, the pushback from from Gotcha Smack, I think, is effectively the placement and the reliability of it, which I think those are valid statements as well. So, as this is something that's only happened one time, as far as I am aware, we can't reliably understand this is going to happen. We're not reliably planning for this because it's not something that's continually happening. It's just the second time. I think that if they're going to do something like this, they just need to commit to it, and they need to make sure that, like, it's like maybe every other patch we're going to do a triple rerun. That way, there's an expectation from the player base on, all right, if I miss one of these main characters, if I miss on the Herda, or if I miss on Aglaya, I know that they're going to rerun fairly soon, because we have an expectation that we are running so many reruns that they're kind of going to come back here pretty quickly. So it's not so much FOMO that I need them right now, because I have an understanding that they're going to come back quickly because of this banner. So I think that's the big thing, that Hoyo needs to come up with a realistic expectation to the player of what they kind of expect to play with. 2, I think he's 100% correct that they are doing a little bit too much synergy in one patch. Now, I kind of agree and disagree in some ways. So, for example, what I would disagree with is, I think, is it a bad thing? I think you can take it from different perspectives, yes and no. So, for example, Herda being in the patch with Jade. Now, from what we kind of understand, Jade is going to be a great, if not initially best in slot, support, or side DPS to the Herda. Obviously, erudition characters are going to work well with her. It's going to be one of the better ones to start off with. It's going to work really, really well. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that they're putting at one synergistic character as a rerun within a premier release. I actually think it's probably, I would argue, from my perspective, a good thing. As a newer player that didn't have opportunities to pull a lot of these rerun characters originally, I think it's a good thing. And I'll give my experience as to why. So I started in the Jade banner. I did not know what I was doing. This is my first ever gacha game, so I did not understand a lot of things. Being that so, I was very hesitant to use any of the gacha systems because I wanted to be very, very, very well versed in the resource management of this game before I wasted anything. So I actually never pulled on Jade's banner. My first banner that I actually pulled on and won a character was Yoon Lee. Luckily, I won my 50-50, and I can actually show you. I'll show you after this just my pulls, just to kind of have an expectation of what I'm trying to say. Um, but I think that they're talking about it from a perspective of kind of their situation and why they think that way. And I want to give a different perspective as a newer player that's only been playing for like 160 days, and it's actually pretty new to the space in general. That because of like where you are in the game, the new player experience, you get a lot more resources than I think that they remember. The story is going to supply you with quite a bit of jades. You're going to get quite a bit of jades and passes from completing kind of the new player experience, all those new kind of new banner stuff, new stuff. You got to realize that there is a bunch of events you can kind of play and do as well. Not just the active events, but the backload of events that are going to supply you with a really good amount of stuff. So you do have a pretty good like starting point as a new player to kind of at least plan with. Now, I will say this: it's not enough to play around with. You need to be kind of diligent and kind of understanding of what you're trying to do and planning. But I think that like it on premier banners, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that you're going to have a previous character release that's going to be incredibly synergistic. For example, with Jade, I think Jade is going to be very, very good with the Herta to start with, but likely I think we're obviously going to get a Jade replacement that's slightly better, if not really better, for the Herta down the line. And I think that this is more of like, do you want a top tier like Herta team to start with, which would probably include Jade, or do you kind of, are you willing to wait? And I think this is one, like, it gives people the option to do that, right? I think options are good. And secondly, it's there, you can reward effectively the people that had pulled her already and kind of allow them to either get a light cone or maybe an E1 to support this new character. And that's their choice. I think that's the important part. I don't find that to be a problem. And I'll give the example of why I think that. So as a new character or a new player, when I started the game, I got Yoon Lee, right? So it's just showing here. I went to 75, 77, got Yoon Lee. And I'm going to show it. I wasn't like, this is, I don't think I paid a single dime on either the monthly pass or the battle pass until like right here. I think I started here in this patch. And so I didn't have a ton of resources banked because I was spending money. So I was able with the new player experience to get Yoon Lee, lose a 50-50 at 75, get Huehue pretty early on, get Sparkle at 80, and then I lost my 50-50 to Robin. Luckily, get Robin on a pretty good quick turnaround, pick up Fei Xiao. So this is the one I want to talk about here, is that the Fei Xiao and Robin and Topaz kind of banners, those I think were all kind of like in synergy, like 1, 2, in one patch 1 and patch 2. I was basically able to get the trio and then eventually the entire best in slot lineup for the follow-up team. Luckily, again, like I'm gonna be completely fair and honest here, I won 4 in a row. I did lose previously, right? So I was able to, with very little investment, beating all the content in the game, going through all the content in the game, completing all the events, completing current events, I was able to effectively choose the best in slot with very targeted choosing, I might add, the follow-up team here. Now, if you notice here, I did miss out on a lot of characters that released. I had to be very choosy and picky with who I picked. But I could target this team because I knew that they were coming along, right? So obviously giving me that option was good for me as a new player. I was able to pick up a premium team fairly easily with targets. Now, this could definitely have been a lot harder if I had lost 50/50s. Obviously, the Topaz is a pretty big dub there. Effectively, you're looking at like 100 and you know, 120, for those two. So it is what it is. Obviously, your luck and mileage will vary. But I think from this perspective, as a new player, I was able to get this team. Now, I think like my luck is maybe not your luck, so I'm gonna even go even further than that and want to give my why I think this is kind of a bigger thing that I think is actually a good thing. So realistically, all these characters are good. They work super synergistically well together. I love this team a lot. I love the way it works and operates. It's super fun to use. I'm fine with that. But realistically, Robin is the glue. She makes this team run, and she is one of the best, if not the best, support in the entire game. I think that having if you're going to make a character like Robin that is just that good, that works so universally good, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to keep rerunning her. And I think the 3.0 makes perfect sense to rerun her. You're probably gonna get an influx of new players that have either left the game or just now coming in because they're seeing the marketing. Having a character that's as strong as Robin looks to continue to be, allows for this character to be available to more players. Now, I would say that Robin shouldn't be that strong. Like making Robin that powerful is definitely kind of a different conversation and a problem. But if you're going to make a character that's just that S tier, that's just that much above a lot of the other characters in the game, that is that important to the synergy of team building within a, especially a turn-based, game system, it's not a bad thing to keep rerunning her. Now, I think that people may get a little bit grumpy about it. They may get a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? They may get a little bit uh, fatigued by it. But I mean, overall, if you're thinking about it from a new player's perspective or somebody that doesn't have the E1 or doesn't have the light cone, I think that's a good thing. Like for me, I've only seen Robin one time. So from my perspective, this is technically my first rerun of Robin. Now, it's a very soon one. I'll grant everybody that. But I think it is actually a fairly okay thing if you're going to have characters that are that important to the meta, that are that important to teams, that are that important to what looks to be future teams as well. So I think that that is not a necessarily bad thing from my perspective. Looking at the rest of these, I don't think that there is like a necessary like ridiculous like pushback. I think most people are kind of grumpy about Fei Xiao, and Robin. I think that they did split those at least on the second half and the first half. So I mean, they're a little bit. There'll be at least an event between both of those to give a little bit more Jades. But there's a lot of good pieces here, but I think that there's a lot of things you can honestly skip on, though, right? So realistically, Robin's the prize, and then you have two new DPS characters that you can kind of choose based on the level of your account. I think they understand that Aglaya is probably going to be a little bit of a skip for a lot of like really meta type players or long-term players, just because number one, she does fit a summon structure that already exists. So if you have, Jing Yuan, you have a lightning summon DPS character. Maybe this one's better, but you still have one. So the coverage there is there. It's kind of the same thing. It does similar things. It's hard to justify it if you have Jing Yuan and also maybe even have Acheron. So it's just really from a coverage perspective, it's difficult. The Herda is obviously an incredibly meta, maybe possibly meta character, but a meta popular character is what I would say. Like it's a really well understood character in the lore, really well liked character in the community. So that's going to be a character that's probably going to push a lot, if not all, the sales. And then obviously you have, Robin, super strong, super powerful character. Jade's going to be a really powerful character for Herda. I believe her banner wasn't a super popular one, so it gives people a chance again. Lingsha also wasn't super popular in the time, but has become really meta defining. They're definitely going to capitalize on that. So I think these aren't necessarily awful things. I don't think that they're necessarily great things in some ways, but in some ways I think they are good things. So they allow people that maybe didn't have a chance for Robin or her E1 to really get a chance to do that, which I think is a good thing. So there's good things and there's bad things, and I think that realistically, like if I had to summarize all of this in one kind of thought, I would say that we have to look at it from perspectives and understand that like we're not going to get all the things we want. We're playing a game that is on its own a predatory kind of game, right? So we have to like moralistically understand that, and we have to have a give and take. We have to kind of make up our own idea of what we would consider to be kind of like over the top, like something that we would consider egregious considering the circumstances, and then we have to make a line in the sand that we don't cross. And I think that's for every individual to make. We are not going to get entirely consumer like great practices because the footing that we are on is shaky to begin with, right? We are paying money to hit a slot machine in order to get random characters who may or may not allow us to even get the character, right? So it is definitely on shaky ground and footing to begin with. So we all have to make a moral standpoint of where we draw a line in the sand. Of like, that's egregious. I'm not going to support that. Or like, okay, I understand the business side perspective of this, because again, Hoyo is a business. They have a fiduciary responsibility, literally legally, to make as much money as possible and be within the stakeholders best interest. So as long as everybody understands that, I think that we can have at least a civil agreement with the company, and then we basically have to create justifications of why or why not. And I think that's realistically it. I think like anyone that's trying to grandstand on this or try to like say that like any of this is awful, I think you're obviously gonna have to speak out of both sides of your mouth. If you're gonna say like this is terrible, this is awful, I think that that's fine. I think you just also have to say like, hey, everything is awful. Like it just is what it is, guys. So that's my kind of thoughts on the rerun banners. What I would say is that my things that I think that like if I had to summarize my thoughts on what I think would be in the best interest to make this as less predatory as possible, because it's going to be predatory no matter what we do, is number one, I think that we need to have a steady expectation on when we're going to do these larger rerun banners. So if you're going to do triple reruns, it's either every time, every other time, every third time. There needs to be a set expectation for the consumer. I think that would be the best way to do that. I'm fine if you're going to do some synergistic tendencies here with it. Like, for example, Jade and Herta are okay. Obviously, Fei Xiao and Robin being on separate sides of the banner, those are some synergies. Like, there's a lot of synergies if you look into this, like with previous banner, this banner, and maybe even next banner, and then phase one and phase two. There's synergies built into this that you can see. But to be fair, there's a lot of synergies in the game as well. They don't need to make it to where they continue like to use the same synergies and rerun the same characters over and over and over again. So second part is they need to make sure that if they're going to do these reruns, that they cycle through the majority, if not all, of the characters. So again, expectation that this is going to run continuously, be kind of a consistent thing on a timeline that we can expect and prepare for. Two, there's an expectation that they're going to make sure to go through, if not all, most of the roster to make sure that players are able to collect characters that they want to collect, not just maybe use. This is a collection game at the end of the day. And my last one is the third one, is I think the best thing that they could do is maybe if they could give us a rerun roadmap. Now, this is maybe something that I think is a little pie in the sky, and they're definitely not going to do this because it would take a lot of FOMO out and allow people to do a lot of planning. And then once you're planning, you're not spending, right? But from my perspective, if I had a good roadmap, let's just say a 3-patch roadmap of what the reruns were going to be, I don't even need the limiteds. I could make up my mind on what characters to kind of approach, what characters to save for. Do I need to skip this patch to get to that patch for a specific character? Those things I think would be really, really good. And I don't think it would like lose the shock value of a premium character. The problem is it's going to give people time to know what to expect and when these rerun characters are popping up. So for example, like I'm a big Boot Hill fan. I will be pulling Boot Hill on this banner because Boot Hill is my favorite character in the game. If I had a lot of time and expectations of when he would pop up, I could have definitely maybe skipped Firefly this run. Now I wouldn't have. I'm paying money. I fully was fine with this. I had an expectation that Boot Hill probably would pull up in either 3.0 or 3.1 because of his timeline of when he last released. But just as an example, let's just say that I wouldn't have pulled Firefly. I would have taken Boot Hill. So in this case, like I'm like that person would be put in a situation where they're like, well, I pulled Firefly because I didn't know when Boot Hill was going to come up again. Now I have a tough decision to make. Do I stick with Firefly or do I pull Boot Hill? So a roadmap would eliminate that and give people a little bit of space to make cognizant, good decisions. Number one, of if they are going to spend money, or two, if they can, farm and save for specific characters, specifically reruns that they really, really like and want to keep on their account. Whether it's either getting characters for the first time, or two, like collecting eidolons or light cones. I think that would be incredibly helpful. But it would probably be a little bit too much against the bottom line for Hoyo, which again, this is a trade-off. They have to make as much money as physically possible and ride that line between where most people would say it's egregious and not, based upon how the company is designed and how the game is designed, right? So we are playing the game, and we have to understand the practices around it. So those are my thoughts on the 3.0 banner release. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. If you have anything you'd like to say or rebuttals, I'd love to hear them. But otherwise, I think I'm going to close this out here. And remember to catch me on twitch.tv/TillianPlay. I stream every Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday, barring some minor inconveniences there. But I'll catch you guys next time. Bye, y'all.